For years, critics have argued that U.S. aircraft carriers are increasingly at risk due to long range, precision guided anti ship missiles. China is often seen as the most likely threat to these carriers. However, the U.S. Navy is less concerned than some observers without military experience might be. According to multiple naval sources, carriers are now less vulnerable than they have been since World War II. The Navy's confidence stems from the fact that it invested huge amounts of money in new technologies to enhance the defense of carrier strike groups and has adjusted its tactics for operating near China. The biggest reason for this confidence, however, is the challenge China would face in finding and tracking U.S. carriers. These carriers, with their large size, distinctive signatures, and steel construction, might seem easy to target. However, targeting U.S. aircraft carriers with China's extensive anti-ship missile arsenal is not as straightforward as it might seem. Now, the vastness of the Western Pacific provides a huge area for these carriers to hide. The South China Sea is just one of 4 minor seas from which these carriers can operate, and it is 1.4 million square miles alone. Carriers can easily hide in the vast Western Pacific, as it is basically the size of 3 Americas, and you can see this right here. I mean, you can see just how big the Western Pacific really is, and Hawaii is not even pictured here. Finding anything in millions of square miles of open ocean is a daunting task, especially when the target is constantly moving. Nuclear power gives U.S. carriers virtually unlimited range. If China spots a carrier, it's likely to have moved by the time weapons are launched. Moving at 35 miles an hour, a carrier can be anywhere in an area of over 900 square miles within 30 minutes, expanding to over 8,000 square miles after 90 minutes. And China has yet to demonstrate it can hit a moving target over the horizon. In fact, very few countries can with their domestically made technology. And if you want the math behind what I just said, go ahead and pause it here and take a look. It's area equals pi r squared. So detecting a U.S. aircraft carrier in the vast Western Pacific is like finding a needle in a haystack, except you have to find the haystack first, and it is in a 150-acre field with hundreds of haystacks, and the needle gets to move around whenever and to wherever it wants. Oh, and if you get close to it, it'll shoot at you. But the question is, can China actually do this? Well, finding and fixing the carrier's location is a crucial initial step. China does have several options, including over-the-horizon radar and reconnaissance satellites. Over-the-horizon radar bounces signals off the ionosphere to monitor the vast ocean areas. However, these radars operate at long wavelengths, limiting the information they can gather. They also lose energy with each bounce to and from the target, and the resulting resolution is too low to track a carrier. Moreover, these large fixed radars are vulnerable to preemptive attacks at the beginning of the war. Plus, they're so unreliable, Russia began to decommission the ones they were using for nuclear launch detection years ago. Reconnaissance satellites are another option. China has launched dozens, some with electronic listening capabilities, others with optical sensors or synthetic aperture radar. However, to obtain target quality information, these satellites must be in low Earth orbit, where they move very quickly, disappearing over the horizon within an hour. So the detection, relay to command, or relaying to another satellite, followed by a command decision and then fire, all have to be made in that hour. And the carrier is still moving, so the window for that decision is much narrower. For this to be effective, China has to continuously surveil the ocean, and Beijing would need a complex constellation of satellites similar to Starlink several times over, which it has nowhere near having. Even if it did, connecting all of these overhead nodes together with an earthbound command and control system and then targeting a moving carrier with satellites would be extremely challenging. The third option China has to find and fix a carrier's location is manned or unmanned radar planes, basically a modern version of the old-fashioned World War II way. However, the U.S. carrier strike groups have dense defensive perimeters in the air, including interceptor aircraft, surface-to-air missiles, surveillance planes, and airborne jammers. No Chinese aircraft likely to get close enough to a carrier to establish a sustained target track. The same thing applies to the Chinese surface vessels and submarines, which are even more vulnerable to preemptive attacks by the strike group. Carriers are equipped with sophisticated air defense systems. These systems are capable of engaging targets at various ranges, from close-in point defense to long-range interception. And the US has demonstrated the Patriot missile has intercepted a so-called hypersonic missile when it intercepted a Russian Kinzhal. The technology also protects ships. Electronic warfare systems can disrupt the guidance systems of incoming missiles or confuse enemy radar systems to make it more difficult to target the carrier. They can also provide early warning of incoming threats. The carrier's air wing fighters also can engage the enemy aircraft and missiles at long range, while helicopters can be used for anti-submarine warfare and provide additional radar coverage. The E-2 Hawkeye, which you see here, extends this defensive zone by adding an additional 340 miles to the ship's detection capability. Then finally, there is the last line of defense for these ships, and that is the phalanx gun. I've seen these operate in person in Iraq, shooting down mortars and rockets. They're impressive, and I'm just going to let you guys take a look at this one. This phalanx gun is carried by every single cruiser, destroyer, and aircraft carrier, and some frigates carry it as well. These systems can intercept missile strikes from a range of roughly 1,600 yards, with a fire rate of about 4,500 rounds per minute. Now, a carrier typically operates as a part of a carrier strike group, as you see here, which includes a variety of other ships, such as the destroyers and cruisers and submarines I just spoke about. These ships provide additional layers of defense, including their own defense and anti-submarine capabilities. The U.S. has moved most of its anti-ship missile defense systems to the Pacific strike groups, so they're absolutely ready. Therefore, the crucial early steps of finding and fixing the carriers are difficult alone. Then, connecting the finding and fixing assets with the command nodes, deciding to fire in time, continuing to track the moving carrier, and update the missile in real time is nearly impossible. Any weapons dispatched against the carrier would need to then navigate multiple layers of active and passive defenses, including electronic countermeasures, defensive weapons, and potentially even beam weapons in the future. Each step must be completed sequentially. If any step fails for these missiles, the whole process breaks down. As the range of an anti-ship missile increases, it requires more updates in flight to successfully hit a moving target. Without timely sensor data and an agile command and control system, the weapon is likely to be ineffective. It doesn't matter if we're talking about a ballistic missile or a hypersonic glide vehicle, the communications challenge is the same. So most of the Navy are not worried about this anti-ship capability. And if you want to say, what about so-and-so admiral that says the Chinese will dominate, I refer you to my video on why commanders always say we're going to lose. I'll just give you a hint. It's for budgetary reasons. So myself, many others in the Navy, not super concerned about these so-called aircraft carrier killer missiles. The Chinese have yet to demonstrate the capability to actually kill anything resembling an aircraft carrier over the horizon. And until that happens, I'm not going to be worried.